I always knew betrayal hurt, but I never knew it could burn through your chest like acid. Imagine spending years holding someone up, only for them to rip £5,000 out of your account and vanish with his side chick. And imagine finding a way and pound 8.5 a way to burn his entire life to the ground. This is the story of how I did exactly that. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or taken advantage of by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe, because today's story is the kind of payback that reminds us karma doesn't always take her time. Sometimes she just needs a little push. When I met him, he felt like the kind of guy you dream of meeting during your university years. He was attentive in a way that made you feel chosen, like he genuinely saw you. He'd show up with takeaway after my late classes, surprise me with handwritten notes, and make me feel like the world was a little less heavy. He was 26, a bit older, more mature in theory, and he carried himself like someone who had finally found direction. In those early months, I believed I'd stumbled into something rare. He worked long hours, or that's what he said. He studied hard, or that's what he claimed. And in the beginning, it looked true. He'd wake up early, disappear to campus or work, and come home telling stories about dealing with difficult customers, strict professors, impossible deadlines. And I believed every word. You believe the person you love. You don't assume they're lying by default. But slowly, the shine faded. It didn't happen all at once. It's strange how people decay in stages. First, he started skipping classes. At first, it was, I'm exhausted. Then, the lecture is pointless anyway. Then, I'll just catch up next week. Except, he never caught up. He just spent more time lying on the couch with his Xbox controller glued to his hands. The no-shows at work came next. He'd sleep through shifts, shrug when I told him he needed to go, and mumble something about them being overstaffed anyway. I'd leave for my own job, still pulling my weight in the relationship, while he'd stay in bed, eyes half open, promising he'd sort it out tomorrow. Tomorrow never came, but the problems did. Eventually, too many no-shows caught up, and he was fired. There's something surreal about watching a person unravel themselves while you keep trying to stitch the pieces back together. I kept picking up extra shifts, double shifts, triple shifts, just to keep us afloat. I'd come home smelling like fryer grease, textbooks still in my bag, eyes burning, and find him playing games or lounging online on forums ranting about random topics with strangers. He'd barely washed a plate, not a single shirt taken off the floor. I'd ask if he could help with laundry, and he'd say, I'll do it later. Later never came either. I'd collapse into bed, wondering if this was stress talking, or burnout, or something temporary. Because love does this thing where it lies for you. It whispers, it'll get better. He'll grow out of this. This is just a rough patch. I clung to that lie longer than I should have. Looking back, the signs were obvious. He had this pattern. He'd become obsessed with something. School, a job, a new hobby. And for a few months, he'd be unstoppable. Then he'd get bored. And the moment boredom set in, everything fell apart. Same story, different chapter. But when you're in love, you don't see patterns. You see possibilities. Then came the night everything snapped. I walked into our flat and something felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still. The kind of stillness that tells you you're about to discover something you can't unsee. His phone, usually glued to him, lay on the sofa. The screen lit up with a text from a name I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have looked, but my heart already knew. Sometimes your body tells you the truth before your brain is ready to accept it. The message was too familiar, too flirty, too intimate. My stomach twisted. I felt the heat rise from my neck to my ears. I scrolled. More messages, more pictures, more conversations that painted a full movie of betrayal. He walked in minutes later, and the second his eyes met mine, he knew. He didn't even deny it. He didn't fight. He didn't apologize in any way that mattered. He just looked annoyed. Annoyed that I'd ruined his evening. As if I was the inconvenience. I threw him out. The adrenaline carried me through the shouting, the door slamming, the shaking hands. I thought that was the worst part. It wasn't. The next morning, my head felt foggy. Everything felt unreal, like someone had thrown my life into a blender. I was brushing my teeth when I suddenly remembered our joint savings account. There should have been a little over £5,000 in there. Mostly mine. I'd worked late nights and missed holidays to save that money. He had contributed maybe a few hundred at most. My stomach dropped. I didn't even dry my hands before grabbing my phone and logging into the account. The moment the balance loaded, my breath caught in my throat. 0. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't pending. It wasn't processing. He had drained it. Every single pound. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a fist. I called the bank. They said the same thing. It was a joint account. He was authorized. They couldn't reverse it. They couldn't help me. I called the police. They said it wasn't a criminal matter. Technically, they said, he didn't steal. You shared the account. The officer suggested civil court, but warned it would cost more than I'd likely get back. I sat on the floor, phone in my hand, numb. I kept thinking, how stupid could I be? How did I let him do this? Betrayal is one thing, but losing £5,000, the money you bled for, hits in a different place, a darker place. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, I found him online bragging about his new life. New flat, new TV, new gaming consoles, new gadgets, all proudly bought with my money. He even posted pictures with captions dripping with arrogance, bragging about how life finally rewards those who take what they want. Every post ignited something inside me, something hot and sharp and unforgiving. I'm not naturally vengeful. Petty sometimes, sure. But vengeful? No. Yet right then, I wanted justice more than I'd wanted anything in my life. Real justice. The kind that punches a hole through someone's arrogance. The kind that doesn't just hurt, it teaches. And then I remembered something. A summer job I once had. A job that paid well but felt like swimming in mud. A job at a debt collection agency. And suddenly, everything clicked. I knew his debts. I knew how close they were to becoming statute barred. I knew how it all worked behind the scenes. I knew the rules. I knew the loopholes. And I knew exactly how to reset the clock. I didn't need £5,000 back. I needed £8.50. The moment I realized what I could do, the anger inside me sharpened into something calm, focused, deadly. I gathered the old paperwork. Every letter, every overdue notice, every scrap of information he'd been too irresponsible to handle himself. Because by the end, I had been doing everything for him, down to managing his debts while he sat on the couch, pretending he couldn't deal with the stress. This time, his dependence would be his downfall. And with that, the plan began. I sat on my bed that night with a stack of his debt letters spread around me like the pieces of a puzzle. Some were creased from being stuffed into drawers. Others still had the faint smell of the old shoebox where he used to hide them. He never opened them. He'd look at the envelope, roll his eyes, and toss it aside like it was a piece of gum wrapper. But I opened them. I kept track. I reminded him of deadlines he never cared about. I handled his mess because someone had to, or we'd drown together, and I wasn't ready to drown. But now, looking at those letters, something shifted. These weren't burdens anymore. They were weapons, tools, opportunities. I remembered every conversation we had where he bragged about his debt being close to becoming statute barred. 6 years of dodging payments. 6 years of ignoring calls, deleting emails, tossing letters. 6 years of irresponsibility that he wore like a badge of honor. He'd laugh and say, "You just gotta wait them out. They can't do anything after 6 years." He'd say it like he was clever, like he'd beaten the system. And he was close. Just a few months away. All he had to do was hold out a little longer. And then I entered the picture. Again. Except this time, I wasn't helping him escape. I was going to help restart the clock. Reset every single one of his debts back to day one. And the best part? It would only cost me £8.50. That night, I laid out the plan in my mind like stepping stones. Step 1. Call every creditor. Step 2. Make a minimum payment on each account. Step 3. Provide his new address. Step 4. Sit back and wait. It sounded almost too simple, but that's the beauty of bureaucratic machinery. Once you flick a switch, the gears turn whether you're watching or not. I took a deep breath and started dialing. The first creditor answered, with the typical polite but exhausted voice of someone who had been working phones all day. "Thank you for calling. How can I help?" I said, "Hi, I'd like to make a payment on behalf of someone. I'm just helping him out." I made sure not to pretend to be him. That would have been illegal, and I wasn't about to get myself in trouble. The system allowed third-party payments as long as no confidential details were requested, and I didn't need any information. I already had everything. They couldn't tell me the balance. They couldn't confirm the name beyond a polite acknowledgement, but they could take money, even £1, even 50 pence if that was the minimum. I handed over the £1. They accepted, and with that, one clock reset. His 6-year dodge restarted. I called the next creditor. Another £1. Another reset. The next one had a minimum payment of £1.50, fine, worth every penny. By the end of it, I had spent £8.50, but what I bought was far more valuable. I bought chaos. I bought inconvenience. I bought repercussions that would echo through every corner of his adult life. And I wasn't finished. I provided his new address at every opportunity, and not just his new flat. I provided his parents' address too, because I knew how it worked. Creditors couldn't officially update the address unless the account holder confirmed, but they could note it. And once it was noted, it became searchable. It became usable. It became a point of contact the moment another agency picked up the case. All it took was one cross-reference, one automated system hit, and his details would be updated. I didn't just set a trap. I set a web. When I hung up the last call, I sat back and let out a slow breath. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Not yet. Just a strange stillness. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. Revenge, when it's well planned, doesn't feel wild. It feels controlled, clean, cold. And then came the waiting. I returned to my life, to my studies, to my job, to my recovery. But in the background, like the hum of a distant engine, I knew things were set in motion. Something was coming for him. Then the first sign appeared. One night, just a couple months later, I was scrolling through one of the gaming forums he used to obsess over. I didn't follow him, but I knew where he hung out. I knew his usernames. And there it was, a post from him. His tone was different, panicked, almost frantic. He wasn't bragging this time. He wasn't showing off new gadgets or new electronics bought with my stolen money. He was asking questions, begging for advice. Got a court letter. Anyone know what happens if I don't go? I felt a slow smile slide across my face. Not a joyful smile. Not a gloating one. Just the smile of someone who finally sees the gears turning exactly as planned. He had no clue I'd restarted his debts. He thought he'd been in the clear. He thought the 6-year mark would protect him. But now, with those tiny payments I'd made, the clock was fresh again. His debts were alive again. Actively collectible. Legally enforceable. Ready and waiting for court action. And the forums, oh, the forums were the worst place to ask for real advice. Someone told him the absolute dumbest thing you can tell a person facing civil court: don't show up. If you don't go, they can't do anything. They can't prosecute if you're not there. And he believed it. I could imagine him sitting in his new flat, the flat he moved into with the girl he cheated on me with, staring at his new TV bought with my money, telling himself he was too clever to get caught. Too clever to face consequences. Too clever to be held accountable. I didn't reach out. I didn't warn him. He tried calling me once, weeks later, his number flashing on my screen like a ghost from a life I'd burned down. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, pretending he wanted advice, pretending he cared. But I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to fix him again, to clean up his mess again, to carry him again. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the end. Then came the court date. I didn't know the exact time. I didn't need to. I just knew it was happening. I imagined him lounging around, convinced skipping it would protect him. I imagined the judge looking at an empty seat and making the decision that always happens in these cases: judgment in favor of the creditor. ACJ, a legally binding debt, a black stain on his credit file that would follow him everywhere. And the best part? He wouldn't even know what was coming next. The bailiffs. I kept checking the forums every few days. I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to savor this slow-motion collapse. And then, one evening, there it was, a new post. His tone was broken, furious, desperate. They took everything. Literally everything. The bailiffs cleaned out my flat. I stared at those words and felt something inside me finally unclench. He described how they showed up early in the morning, how they banged on the door, how they came in legally with the court judgment backing them, and took every single thing of value. The brand new TV he bought with my stolen savings, the new gaming consoles, the gadgets, the accessories, the computer, all those shiny toys he'd bragged about, gone, all of them hauled out, while he stood there helpless, side chick screaming, both of them realizing the universe wasn't on their side anymore. He said he felt violated. Funny how that works. Because when he drained our account, I felt violated too. Except he had support. He had my savings. He had someone to run to his side chick. I had no one. I had to carry myself through it. And now, standing in his empty flat, he finally understood something I'd learned long before. Actions have consequences. By the end of that week, he posted again. This time, his tone wasn't angry. It was hollow. Side chick left me. Says she can't deal with the drama. I read that message twice, slowly, like a line of poetry that deserved appreciation. He had nothing left. No partner. No gadgets. No money. And worst of all, several new CJ's County Court judgments that would lock him out of normal financial life for years. No proper bank accounts. No credit cards. No loans. No renting decent places. No jobs in finance. Just rejection after rejection. All because of £8.50. And the beautiful part was that I didn't need to do anything else. The system would take care of the rest. His future was sealed. He never figured out it was me. Or maybe he did, somewhere deep down, in the quiet hours of the night. Maybe he connected the dots. Maybe he remembered who used to handle his letters, who had insider knowledge, who had every detail. Maybe he thought about calling me, apologizing, or screaming, or begging. But if he ever entertained the idea, he never acted on it. Justice had already been served. I thought everything would end the moment the truth came out. But life never wraps itself so neatly. Even after exposing everything and finally standing up for myself, the silence that followed felt heavier than the chaos before. It was strange. For so long, I waited for that one moment where everything would make sense. But when it finally arrived, I realized how much of myself I had lost while trying to stay strong. Days started passing in a blur. Some mornings I woke up confident, ready to rebuild life from scratch. Other mornings I stared at the mirror, ceiling, wondering how much of the pain was still hiding under the surface. Healing wasn't a straight line like I once imagined. It was messy. It was tiring. It was full of moments I didn't expect. I spent nights thinking about the choices I made, the betrayals I survived, and the version of myself that kept fighting even when everything was falling apart. Slowly, I started understanding something important. The pain wasn't a punishment. It was a reminder that I had cared deeply. The silence wasn't loneliness. It was space where I could finally breathe without pretending. I stopped trying to rush my recovery. I let things come and go. I let memories pass through me without pulling me back. And in that slow, quiet process, I noticed a change. The anger that once controlled me faded. The fear that kept me awake at night grew softer. The heaviness on my chest lifted little by little. I realized I wasn't returning to my old self. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who finally understood the value of peace. And when I looked around, life didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a place where I could start over without carrying the weight of yesterday. That was the moment I knew I had truly moved forward. Not because the past disappeared, but because it no longer had the power to decide who I would become next.